Alrighty, so in this video we want to look at the production possibilities curve, and we want to review just a little bit, but we also want to take a look at how we can move that curve and manipulate that curve and what it means when that curve shifts either to the right or to the left. So we'll just kind of, we'll title this manipulating the PPC. Or remember, this could be called the PPF, which is the production possibilities frontier. All right, so let's go ahead and draw one out. And again, I apologize for the handwriting. So this is going to be how it looks. And we're going to put consumer goods down here, so the stuff that you and I buy. We're going to put capital goods on this axis. Okay, remember capital, we're talking about physical capital, and physical capital is the tools and things that businesses use in the production of their products. So one of the questions that we want to ask is, can we shift the curve? All right. But before we get there, let's just go back and review just a little bit. Remember, if we're along this curve, let's say that we're an economy and we're producing either capital or consumer goods or some combination of the two. What we want to do is, if we're at a point on this curve, is this good or bad? All right, and what is this called when we're on here? And so, first of all, we would say that this is definitely a good place to be because it is considered efficient. Okay, if we are inside this curve, is this good or bad? All right, and so we would definitely say that this is a bad thing because that means that we're producing this much consumer goods, this much capital, but we could be producing a lot more. We could either be producing way up here in capital, or if we're producing this much capital, we could be producing way out here in consumer goods. And so within this curve, let me get rid of some of these dots. I'm going to make a mess here before I even get started. So what we would say, if we're anywhere inside the curve, if on the curve is efficient, then inside the curve would be inefficient. All right, and so if we were depicting unemployment, and unemployment is, when some people aren't working, some of the factories aren't working, this is what we would show, okay? So if we say that there's an increase in unemployment, let's say that we were operating at point A, and then unemployment happened, we would say that that's a shift of the dot inside the curve. All right, so this is, we'll say inefficient or unemployed resources. All right, and that's not a good place to be. And so if you look at where we're at today with an unemployment rate of somewhere around 8.3 or so, we would definitely say that we are inside the curve. We're not on it. All right, and then so this is point B. And how about if we do a point out here, point C? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? All right, this is neither. Okay, because this is, can we produce more than we can produce? That's really what this is saying. And so at this point, this is saying we can't even produce that many consumer goods, even if we dedicated all of our resources. Because, let's say that number's 10. This would say, okay, can we produce 12 consumer goods? And obviously we can't, because if we're producing 0 capital, we can only produce 10. But also, if we're producing, let's say we can do this much capital, so it'd be there. Okay, we can't also do this much. And so this point out here is unattainable. All right, we just can't do it. All right, we don't have enough resources. So what would happen, so think about this for just a second, is it possible, let me erase some of this, is it possible to reach a point like C at any time in a country's history? Okay, at any time in the future, can we reach a point like the point C? And the answer is actually yes. Whoops, erasing too much there. All right, so let's go back and put the point here. So the answer is it's unattainable right now, but we can do some things to cause this curve to actually shift out. Okay, and so what does it mean when that curve shifts out? So let's say that we did something like this. This was our new production possibilities curve. Not the best, but well, let me redraw that because it really wasn't good at all. So here's our new curve. So something happened, and we'll talk about what that is in just a second, but something happened that made it to where when we were using all of our resources, we could produce, X there and Y there. But something happened to where now we can produce, this much. We can produce more Y, and we can produce more X. And so what I want you to think about is what could happen to bring that about. All right. And so we can shift the curve. And so that would be a yes. And if it shifts out to the right, if rightward shift, we would say that this is rightward shift represents growth in whatever industry that is. And so we would say that if we're producing more capital and more consumer, then this would represent growth in the entire economy. All right, so when you get a question that says show an economy, use a production possibilities curve or frontier to depict a growth in the economy, this is what you would do. You would draw the first one, and then you would draw an additional curve going out. All right, and so now point C, where it was unattainable before when we were at this first curve, now point C would be considered efficient. All right, and so now we're happy again. It is possible to reach that. All right, and so let's think about, well, before we get there, when we talked about capital, I want to just spend just a second talking about why that's important. Okay, if you remember, and this is the physical capital, why do you think physical capital would be so important? And the answer is that the more machines and tools we get, so increased capital, will lead to, so let's say that you're a worker. Let's say that you cut grass for, you start your own grass business, and you start with a push mower, all right? And so you can do, say, 3 yards, 3 yards per day with a push mower. Okay? And so you can get, say $30 a yard, and so you're making $90 a day. And so you're doing okay with this. But let's say, what kind of capital could you get to maybe help you out? And so let's say that you go buy a riding lawnmower. And let's say now that you can do 6 yards a day, because you can do it a lot faster. And now you're going to get $30 per yard still, and so now you're earning $180 a day. So you're earning twice as much. And so this is what happens when companies add capital. The person doing the lawns, you just got a lot more efficient, because in the same amount of time, now you can do 6 yards, whereas earlier you could only do 3. And so that's why capital is so important to an economy, because it allows an increase in efficiency, an increase in production, and it eventually will lead to more output. Okay, so as we produce more capital and businesses use more capital, so if we increase capital, that's going to have the effect of increasing consumer goods, okay, or increasing production and everything. All right, and so capital is extremely important. When we talk about economic growth, capital is extremely important in increasing our economic growth. All right, so let me just switch to a new slide here, because that has just gotten very messy. So let's say that this is our first curve, all right, curve 1, and then we were shifting out, so that'll be curve 2. So what we want to do is figure out what would cause a shift like that. Oh, that's not a P and a Q. So we'll just keep it consumer and capital. All right, and so the thing that causes this increase in economic growth is a change. Remember, triangle is change in the quantity or quality of the factors of production. Okay, so let's look at how that works. So the first factor of production that we often talk about is land. And so let's say, how could we increase the quantity of land that we have? Well, there's not too many easy ways to increase the quantity of land. We could go to war and take over land. We could buy land. But that would be about the only two ways. Okay, so how could we increase the quality of land? And that would be to discover new technologies that would allow us to extract things out of the ground that maybe we couldn't before. And there's a thing right now, the natural gas industry in the U.S. is doing extremely well. Okay, we got a ton of natural gas. It has become a huge, huge thing for the United States, and they've been able to get access this by something called fracking. Okay, it's a new tech. It's a technology. I don't know how new it is, but it's technology that they're employing now that they can get a lot of natural gas out of it. And there's a lot of this science that I have no clue about what it is, but I do know that they're getting a lot more natural gas now, and it's because of this change in technology. And so this kind of improves, in some respect, the quality of the land. You might could argue that this is a capital thing, but it opens up the land to more production. And so if we have, if natural gas, if this is natural gas down here instead of consumer goods, then you would see when the fracking starts, you would see this huge increase in the amount of natural gas that we can get. Okay, we could also use think about agriculture, things like fertilizer. All right, that would do it. Let's say that we put up wind farms. All right, and so that's using the land in ways that we weren't able to use it before. All right, and so any of the changes in the quantity or quality would shift this curve to the right. All right, so that's the first one, land. The second one's labor. All right, how can we increase either the quantity or the quality of labor? And so the quantity, we just more people. And so how can you get more people into your country? Well, you can open up immigration and encourage immigrants to come here, open immigration. That's one of the things that's made this country so wealthy, all the people coming into it. The argument that immigrants are taking our jobs is not quite as clear cut as some might lead you to believe. So anyway, so immigration would increase the labor force. We could go on the bad end of this and say, you know what, we're going to allow 10-year-olds to work again. And so we could increase that, or we could say, make a law saying you have to work until you die. That would be bad, but we could do that. That would increase the quantity of labor. But what could we do to increase the quality of labor? And so as y'all read the other day about human capital, we can figure out a way to increase the skills of the labor itself. Okay, we want the workers to be able to do things more efficiently, figure out new skills to make them better at what they do. And if that happens, if we can make the workers better, then we will see this curve shift out. All right. So the third one is capital. Sorry, the third one is capital, and we know that that's the machinery. All right. And so the more machines we get, just like the other example over here, the more machines we get, so the riding is going from a push mower to a riding mower, the more machines we get, the more we can produce. All right, and that would cause that curve to shift out. And then finally, the fourth one, entrepreneurship, we'll abbreviate it there. Entrepreneurship, what do you think we could do to increase either the quantity or quality of entrepreneurship? Well, one thing to increase the quantity, again, is immigration. We allow more, if somebody comes over here seeking a doctorate or if they have a higher level degree, we allow them access into the country easier than we do other people. And so you'd say, you know what, that's going to increase the entrepreneurial talent of the United States, and we want those people here because they will make our lives better. So we could increase the number of people in the U.S., and that would increase the number of entrepreneurs, or we could pass laws that make entrepreneurship easier. In India, one of the problems that India has is that it is hard to go through all the paperwork to start new businesses. From the stuff I've read, it might take a year or 2 or 3 to get all the necessary documentation that you need in order to start your own business. In some countries, it might take you a couple of days. In the U.S., a couple of weeks. But so you want to make it to where the laws allow the individuals gives the individuals the opportunity and the ease of starting up their own business, because once more people decide to start businesses, then you're going to see this increase again in the production possibilities curve. So again, remember, this is the key phrase that you'll want to keep in mind when we're doing this stuff. An increase in the quantity or the quality of the factors of production. So any of these four, the land, the labor, the capital, or the entrepreneurship, any of those, a change in any of those would shift that curve out. So real quick, let me just do one more thing, and then we'll call this video done. Is it possible to have the curve, so if this is curve 1, to have the curve shift in? And so the fact that it can shift out tells you that it can move. So questioning whether can it shift in or not, the answer is a definite yes. And so again, this would be a change in the quantity or quality of the factors of production. So if you got taken over in a war and half your land disappeared, that would do that. The labor, what if half the country left? All right, you have fewer laborers. That's going to cause the economy to shrink. Capital, if a computer virus hit all the computers in the United States and lasted for 3 years, that would cause our production capability to go in. And entrepreneurship, we can pass laws that would tremendously discourage entrepreneurs, and so that would cause the curve to shift in. So by shifting in, we're showing economic decline, and shifting out, we're showing economic growth. All right, let me do one last thing. It is possible for one of these sides to move. Oh, yeah, let me keep going here. Okay, so let's say that this is our curve. Is this possible? So let's say that this is capital goods and this is consumer goods. So 100 there, 100 here, and then 120 here. Is it possible for one industry to get more efficient or be able to produce more, and one industry to stay the same? And the answer is definitely yes. Some technology may come into the capital, producing capital that isn't applicable to consumer goods. And so it is possible to have a curve that looks like this, to where it stays the same on one end and then increases on the other. We can draw it a different way as well. We can draw it to where it looks like that. It's just saying the same thing. So anyway, so that's it for this one. Make sure you can know if I give you a question on a test or a quiz that says depict an economy experiencing economic growth using a production possibilities frontier, that you know that this is how you do it. And then I would say something to the effect of explain how that happens or why that would happen. Also make sure that you can talk about different points on a graph and what that means. This is the sad place, inefficient, unemployed. This is the happy place, and this is the unattainable. All right, so that's it for this one, and until next time.